Okay, welcome back to Criminology. Now, as mentioned at the end of part 1, general and specific deterrence strategies is what we're going to begin with. Now, general and specific deterrence strategies underpin our current justice system. So here we are in part 2, and we're going to describe the nature of and the reasons for the particular strategies that have been included in this system. Now, this part also explores those crime prevention strategies that have now fallen out of favor in our society, such as capital punishment and the American version of what they call the 3 strikes you're out policy. We have a different policy in Canada, and I'll touch on that. Now, we will conclude with the exploration of the policy implications of rational choice theory that includes just deserts. We'll explore that concept that has formed the basis of many current criminal prevention and punishment strategies. Just deserts and the justice model advance that those who violate the rights of others deserve punishment commensurate to the seriousness of the crime, with no consideration to the personal characteristics or circumstances of the offender. So we're going to explore this all more thoroughly here in this part 2. So let's get started. We're going to begin by looking at the general deterrence theory. Essentially, general deterrences are the criminal punishments that come into play when an individual chooses to commit a crime. For most of us, punishments are deterrents for committing a crime. There are many factors, and we're going to look at 5 that go into, effectiveness of deterrence. The first is certainty of punishment. This just makes sense. If there is a certainty of being arrested, convicted, and sanctioned for criminal behavior, then crime should decline. Now, this perspective adds 3 reasons that a criminal may persist with committing a crime. If criminals believe there's a small chance of getting caught, 2, the reluctance of some police officers to make arrests, or 3, even if arrested, likely to receive a lenient punishment. That those 3 variables can influence a choice or how deterrent a strategy may be. Now, these reasons can make sense, as we often see different punishments for the same crime make to be due when the crime occurred, type of crime committed, and the group specific. This is related to the who, or the demographic. Who is the group that's specifically identified. The second is the level of police activity. This factor posits that the higher the number of police present should reduce the level of criminal behavior. Now, this does not always bear out to be the case. Currently, police arrest rate is about 20%. Research suggests that arrest rates closer to 30% would reduce crime significantly. When police make more sudden changes in their activities to target specific areas, whether it's a specific community, neighborhood, crime type, they will employ what is known as crackdowns. That's a good example of an effective crackdown are Ontario's RIDE programs, Reduced Impaired Driving Anywhere. Third, severity of the punishment. As you may expect, this factor is about the more severe of the punishment, the greater the crime reduction. This is also not always true for all crimes. Capital punishment. In Canada, capital punishment, or the death penalty as it was known, was banned in 1976. The research into effectiveness of capital punishment has utilized 3 types of research: the immediate impact, comparative research, and time analysis. All research has had mixed reviews, if you will. This seems like capital punishment should be effective. However, criminologists are mixed on how effective. Research into the effect of capital punishment found that murders increased rather than decreased after well-publicized executions. Other research results and similar variations in mixed results were where the outcomes were inconsistent. So does swiftness of the punishment make a more difference? Well, this again you would think might be very effective. Commit the crime and find yourself arrested in court and sanctioned inside of a week may be an effective deterrent. However, things do not move that quickly, and the research is again mixed. All right, what about the fifth element, informal sanctions? Well, this may be a little bit surprising. Informal sanctions, this would be things like anger expressed to you by friends who found out you committed a crime, the stigma, the indignation toward the offender by friends, family, and neighbors. Now, this experience of being disappointed in by others may be very powerful and altering people's behavior. So what we'll do next is we're going to explore some of the specific deterrent theory. Here the theory suggests that the sanctions need to be very powerful, so powerful that the criminal would never repeat their crime. Creating a sort of this crime that gets a sanction. Sanctions being very powerful will be more likely to be very effective. So does specific deterrence deter crime? Well, certainly with hardened criminals, this also does not provide much of a deterrent. What is interesting is that about 2/3 of all convicted offenders were re-arrested within 3 years of their release from prison. Now, this introduces a couple of more terms. I'll expand on incarceration, recidivism, and probation. So in the bigger scheme, incarceration is the confinement to prison. That's it. That's incarceration. Recidivism, now this is the important one, or it's an important variable, this is the curious term in that anyone who is released from prison but then returns to prison, that's the rate of return to prison. And in Canada, this is in the range of between 30 and 50% recidivism rate. Essentially, for everyone who goes in, 30% to 50% go back in at some point after they've been released. One effective approach for some offenders is to use probation. This is where rehabilitation to the community can continue and the individual can re-enter and be successful in the long run. Now, a couple of other terms I would like to introduce here. One is called stigmatization, and the other is regenerative shaming. Now, I'll get into why. Criminologist John Braithwaite researched why specific deterrences are not as effective as hope. He identified in our society, punishment can be stigmatizing, that element of shame, and perhaps separating those who have offended from those who have not. Braithwaite divided the shame into two distinct types. Stigmatization, by definition, is the ongoing degradation or humiliation in which the offender is branded as an evil person and cast out of society. Now, the second one I had mentioned, the reintegrative shaming, it's viewed as a better alternative as there is shame. However, it is to be brief and controlled and followed by forgiveness, an apology, and repentance in an effort to reconnect with the community. Now, this approach, although not the same, it is similar to what we've referenced last week on restorative justice, where the criminal or the perpetrator and the victim, along with the community, work together to find a solution that satisfies everybody's needs. Incapacitation. I mentioned earlier we'd come back to it. Here's where we're going to do it. This is the term given to the idea that keeping offenders in confinement will eliminate the risk of their committing more crime. Well, particularly if the crimes are in the offender's prime years to offend, youth and young adult. Remember, we age out of crime, so if you're going to be in jail while you're in those years, that will reduce crime. Again, there's some mixed results as to the reliability of all of that. The logic behind incarceration, it just seems to make sense that if those who commit a crime are in prison, they ought to be reducing crime because they're in prison. However, there are factors in prison that can affect the outcomes. Socialization by other prisoners. That is to say, while you're in prison, you learn how to become a better criminal. Some prisoners manage to carry on directing crime from prison. Now, I mentioned in the introduction that another explanation was the 3 strikes you're out. Now, this is a US standard. In Canada, we have instead designation. You can designate an offender as a dangerous offender. This strategy, say it with me, has mixed research in its results. The criminologist offers several reasons why the 3 strikes approach is not as likely to be effective, and they include: 1, most 3-time offenders age out. They get older, so they age out. So their reasons for going back may not be for an offending. It may be to get to a lifestyle they're familiar with. Secondly, current sentences for violent crime are already quite severe. And then thirdly, adding more prisoners to an existing system increases the cost. We could also include the would-be racial disparity in sentencing already exists, and we could also include risk to police, as 2-time offenders may react to avoiding a 3rd strike. Prisons already likely have the most frequent offenders. So what can we wrap up with, if you will? We can start touching on how there's policy implications of choice theory. Although there are mixed results all through rational choice theory and general deterrence theory, these models do have some important input. Consider this: if you're driving on the provincial highways and you're traveling 25km over the speed limit, when suddenly you see a marked police car in the distance. What do? Well, do you maintain your speed and happily wave at the officer as you go by at 25km over the speed limit, or do you slam on or ease on the brakes, at least to apply the brakes to reduce your speed, so the posted speed limit? This is an example of how well marked police cars can deter a would-be criminal. As mentioned in the introduction, just deserts. Now, just deserts as a strategy, this is an effective choice theory strategy. This strategy treats all offenders equally, without regard to their background or personal characteristics. Criminologist Andrew von Hirsch research can be encapsulated in 3 points. Those who violate others' rights deserve to be punished. Secondly, we should not deliberately add to human suffering. Punishment makes those punished suffered. And then thirdly, punishment may prevent more misery than it inflicts, which justifies the need for just deserts punishment. Okay, now this brings us to the end of content of our first theories. Although these theories are mixed, it is still based on the evidence and the science involved to date. Now, all of these theories will have different degrees of strength of their theories. So like I said, try them on, look around, see from your own experience which ones may have had the best impact. But remember, your experiences that you have in watching and seeing other people break the law are limited compared to the research that has been found across Canada. So our belief is helpful, but it's not a foundation for making decisions. So I hope that you get some good information from these theories, and I hope it helps you understand what are the different explanations for why someone might commit a crime. All right, everybody. Good luck and carry on the good work. Bye now.